how are you? My name is Natasha Wynn, and I am an active member of Golden Cypress. Please step over here. That's okay. Judge William L. Dawson is an author, motivational speaker, and administrative and presiding judge of East Cleveland Municipal Courts. He is married to Ellis Dawson, and they have one daughter together, Aries Dawson. Prior to becoming a judge, his criminal defense practice includes cases in Ohio Municipal and State Court, the Ohio Supreme Court, the United States District Court of the Northern and Southern District of Ohio, and the United States Court of Appealing in the Sixth Circuit. As an attorney, Judge Dawson handled cases ranging from traffic violations to murder charges. Judge Dawson was born, raised, and educated in East Cleveland, Ohio, where he is currently presiding as the judge. Judge Dawson experienced and survived many of the same temptations and obstacles that our youth face today. It was those experiences that led Judge Dawson to become a lawyer and ultimately a judge, with a mission to help as many people as possible. In order to reach, educate, inspire the community, Judge Dawson wrote a book called The Legal Matrix: How the System is Controlling Your Life, and its comparison workbook, his second book, 99 Problems: How Your Failure, Flops, and Flaws can lead to your greatness. Aim to further inspire the generations to come, for this generation to overcome their obstacles. Additionally, Judge Dawson created workbooks, educational manuals, and programs that can be taught in our courts and area high schools. When not in court, Judge Dawson conducted the Finish First probation program for convicts and criminals, the Finish First program for junior and senior high school youth. Additionally, he is the founder and executive producer of the Annie L. Dawson program for justice, education, and achievement, which provides mentoring and scholarship for our college-bound youth. With further ado, here's Judge William Dawson.
Thank you very much. Great job. I'm going to be brief, but hopefully it's informative, because I know we're kind of running behind, so I want to do what I can to get us back on schedule, and I think everyone's probably ready for lunch. A couple things I would like to mention. I am the judge in the East Cleveland Municipal Court, which is a wonderful thing because I was born in that city. So my passion to actually help change the city is why I'm there and what's driving me. So it's pretty unique, and I really thank God basically for that opportunity every day that I can help in my city where I was born at. Another thing that in the introduction I want to mention, in addition to doing the seminars and things like that, I have a program that we do at the area high schools. We're at Glenville High School every Friday, as well as Shaw High School, and what we do is we provide education on how to avoid negative interaction with the legal system, because you can gain as much education and book smarts as necessary to put you to the next level, but if you're still making the same mistakes that we see so common in our community, you may have a negative interaction with the legal system that could derail you from whatever it is that you want to do. So that's why this type of opportunity is very important to me. And I want to thank Pamela Hubbard for inviting me. And one of the things she mentioned early on, which is so true, is that this is election season, but not for me. I'm not running for anything at this point. This is my second year of the term, and I have 4 more years. But anytime I'm asked to come and speak, especially when youth are involved and it's an opportunity to provide some type of life skills or leadership training, I'm willing to do it. So I'll say that right off the bat, because if you need me, I'll be there. So Ms. Hubbard wanted me to talk about the legal matrix, which is interesting because that was the first book I wrote when I was an attorney. And the reason I wrote that book is because as an attorney, I saw so many people in the legal system, and they would stand next to me in court, and specifically in federal court, because whether you know the court system or not, what happens in East Cleveland are misdemeanors, then you go to the state level at the county, and then you can actually go to the federal court where you're dealing with serious offenses and serious jail time. So I'd have clients standing next to me, and they would say, you know, Judge, or at the time, Attorney Dawson, I didn't know that doing X, Y, and Z or selling drugs could result in a 20-year to life sentence. And I'm standing next to these young men trying to explain to them, it's all the little things that you've done getting up to this point is why we're here now. And I believe with a passion that if everyone had at least a clue of the laws that were out there, of the traps that were out there, so to speak, then maybe we would make better decisions. So instead of having young men sitting next to me looking at 20 years to life, and I've had the unfortunate situation of at least 2 or 3 clients who had those sentences, they would have made various adjustments early on. So I went on this mission, I wrote the book, I said, you know what, I need to let everybody know, don't sell drugs, don't do this, don't do that, or eventually you can destroy your life. And after I wrote the book, I said, man, the people that really need to read this book may not even pick it up. So what else can I do to get the message out? So I created a workbook, and that's when I took the workbook to the schools, and that's now what we do in the schools. And we talk about everything from domestic violence to disorderly conduct, all the small things that lead up to criminal behavior. So that was the legal matrix. And what I decided to do, other than just talk about the traps of the legal system and how the legal system is waiting to find you making mistakes, because it is, and if you do make mistakes, whether it's in my court or other courts, there are consequences to pay. I don't know if anyone was able to catch it, but just recently, or yesterday, we had a story that ran on Fox 8 News because there was a young man, or a man, in my courtroom who was convicted of stealing lawnmowers over and over in the city of East Cleveland. And quite frankly, the officers were tired of him, the prosecutors were tired of him, so they wanted me to do something. What could I do to kind of change this young man's direction? One of the obvious things I could do is send him to jail. But then I thought on top of that, let me try to instill some type of responsibility in this young man, some sense of pride. So part of my sentence was to have him go and cut the grasses in the empty lots in the city of East Cleveland yesterday. So we were out in the morning with him while he cut these grasses, and the point of the matter was, though he made a mistake, there were consequences to pay, but at the same time, hopefully he can learn something from it. So in addition to the possibility of the jail time when I actually sentenced him, this activity of cutting grass, maybe that sparked something in him, some sense of pride in the community, some sense of responsibility. And I must admit that when I worked with him and I saw him, it seemed like he was uplifted a little bit. There was a little bit of a pep in his step because we went and actually picked him up out of the jail that morning to let him cut grass. So I don't know if he was in a good mood because he was out of jail for a few hours, but nevertheless, whatever it was something about him. So then I made sure our bailiffs fed him before we sent him back to jail. And the first thing they said was, why do you want to feed him? Then everybody's down in jail is going to want to get out just to work for Judge Dawson to get a meal. And I said, well, that's exactly maybe the point I want to get across. That the young men and women that are in the East Cleveland jail, they'll know that when they come before me, not only are you going to get a sentence, but you may have to do something that's going to put you on the track to changing your life. So that's really what my mission is. And you'll hear a little bit later about the movement that we've created in our court, which is called Cycle Breakers. But so when I was asked to speak about the legal matrix, I've talked about it time and time again, especially from an attorney's point of view of how if you make a mistake, you can ruin your life, bottom line. As young people, if you get a record, it's very well possible you may not get the job you need or you want when you get older. If you decide to get a tattoo on your face, it's very well possible you may eliminate yourself from certain possibilities. And I've had a conversation with adults because I just try to figure this stuff out. And a lot of times we say, well, you know what, they're young, they'll come around, but it's a little bit different. And I'm sure you've heard this before, the times are different now than they were when I was growing up and some of the other people that were in the room. Back then you could make little mistakes and you could still get back on track. But now the competition is so fierce, the economy is different, everybody's trying to get to a certain level of success. People are looking for ways to eliminate you out of the qualification process. So if you come to a job interview or you're walking down the street and you have tattoos all over your face, you may pass a CEO of his own business. He may be looking for a young man or young woman to hire. You could have been a qualifying person, but just by that look, he may change his mind. Now that may not be fair, but that's the reality. Same thing about getting a record. Just because you may have a misdemeanor on your record for assault or theft or something like that, that may mean the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So I don't really buy into the whole fact that, okay, the young people will come around because the competition is really serious now. The fact that a lot of people are going to jail, things that we used to do in high school back in the day, for instance, fighting in a hallway. You used to go to the principal's office, you sit there for a couple hours, maybe your parents were caught. Now you're getting cases down in juvenile court. And whether or not you realize that there's a new facility that's built, it's big, it's nice, has enough room for everybody. So the thing is, instead of just going to the office now, young people are getting marks against them that may last a lifetime. So that's why it's so serious to deal with this legal matrix. But instead of just talking about that, what I've done is I've changed it, and we're going to talk about the success matrix. We're going to talk about some tools and some things that you can utilize to be successful. And again, I'm not going to be very long. One of the interesting things about being a judge is that I get a lot of stories. I meet a lot of people, I hear a lot of stories, so I want to share one with you. There was a young man who grew up in the city of East Cleveland. And it just so happens that many of the people that I deal with actually live in the city and have stayed there. Young man grew up in the city of East Cleveland, had a single parent home, like many of us have experienced. Was on the right track, for a while, doing well in school, extracurricular activities, things like that. Kind of figured out, he knew he wanted to do something as far as not being in the streets of East Cleveland. Went through all the schools, but then at some point, the environment kind of sucked him in. And he started doing things that weren't the best things to do. Every now and then he would cut school. And though his mother didn't want him cutting school, he cut school anyway. Every now and then he would, maybe try a drink, get drunk and things like that. Though his mother expected more from him, he did that anyway. And then ultimately the environment got the best of him because he started dabbling in drugs. And whether or not you realize it, that's really a dead end for you. Because most times, as they said, you're going to end up either dead or in jail. So this young man who had all this potential, had everything going for him, and like I said, did well in school in the beginning, started selling drugs, and he was headed down the wrong track, bottom line. And if I could see it, as I tell people now, when I go speak with young people, another thing I call myself is I try to be a disruptor. Because no longer am I concerned about necessarily being politically correct. I just tell you it how it is. And that's based on all the experience that I have with people coming in my courtroom. So oftentimes, I can look at a young person and I can see where they're going. Now, they can always turn it around. You always have an opportunity to turn your life around. But I can identify the young men and the young women who are going to have some problems because of their attitude, maybe the way that they approach me, the way that they respond to my questions in class, things like that. I can see it. So with this young man, I saw it. You can see it plain as day. He's going down the wrong track. But somehow, he turned it around. And I think what happens is when we find something to believe in, when we find something to hang our hat on, something to inspire us, we then get the spark to go in a different direction. The good thing about this young man is that he had some family members who cared about him. And though he was going down the wrong track, he didn't give up. So eventually, he stopped selling drugs. He started, paying attention in school. He ended up going to college and graduating. And then luckily, after all of that, that same young man was able to come back to that city, run for judge, and get elected. I'm that young man standing in front of you. I'm that person who made all those mistakes. I'm the young man who was going down the wrong track totally. 2 feet from jail. But instead, because I was able to change, I was able to get my focus together, I was able to turn that all around. And the reason I say that that's rare, because it just doesn't happen. Most times, when you start down that track, when you start going negative, it's hard to get out that lane. It's very hard. So that's why my passion and my drive is to make sure as many young people as possible don't make those same mistakes. Because you don't want to have to fight uphill if you don't have to. You was heading into the legal matrix, absolutely. So here we go. What is the legal matrix? The laws that are designed to keep order. The people who cause you to get in trouble. So some of your friends and family, those are part of the legal matrix. The people who keep you in trouble. So sometimes we have friends and family that we hang around with, we just won't disconnect. I talk a lot about unhealthy connections, and sometimes it's very hard, especially when you are like us. We come from the inner city, the urban community, we have friends who are there. It's hard to disconnect, but many times it's to our benefit to disconnect, because if we don't, they will pull us into this legal matrix. Errors in judgments or actions made daily over a long period of time. The reason I put that there is, we don't just fall oftentimes into the hole of destruction or throwing our lives away. It's little errors and judgments on the daily basis. So it's that first decision to get in the car with the young man or young woman when you know they don't have a license. Or they don't have a car and they come to pick you up and say, let's go for a ride. It's that decision. That may not be the one that puts you in jail, but it's ones that come after that. So what I encourage people to do is just kind of manage what you're doing on a daily basis. Instead of making errors in judgment, try to have disciplines, small disciplines that you do every day. Whether it's, your health, whether it's every morning when you get up, you say something positive to yourself. You say that, yes, I go to Glenville, I go to Shaw High School, but you know what? I'm going to be the top of the class. I'm going to be better than everything that's going on around me. I'm not going to get in fights like everyone else. I'm not going to cut school. It's those daily affirmations that'll put you in the right direction. So basically, that's what I did. I decided to change it from the legal matrix to the success matrix, where we're playing the game so that we win in life, so that you don't expose yourself to the things that I had to go through. And you have to connect with resources that ensure your success. Luckily today I have a couple of people with me. One young lady is an intern with the court. Another one's a colleague and a friend. But the bottom line is that you have to surround yourself with people who are trying to take you to the level that you need to be at, or that you want to be at. Oftentimes our friends don't really want to see us succeed. And it's not because they are necessarily haters all the time. It's more so, you could look at it like this. You're such a nice person, you're such a good person, that they want you around. And then though they don't have extra goals, and they don't want to achieve on another level, they want you to stay with them. So oftentimes they'll keep you in their pool, their gravity pool. They want you to come on and let's go play PlayStation. I know you need to study, but let's play PlayStation, or let's listen to this particular video or music. But keep in mind that if you surround yourself with people who are trying to go on another level, the chances are you'll be on that same level. And as I mentioned, small, simple disciplines done every day for a long period of time. That's success. Success is not overnight. So a discipline is simply going to school every day. And not just going to school, paying attention. Not just paying attention, but having a pencil. You'd be amazed. I go to some of the classes to speak, and I'd have people write stuff down, and there's no pencil, there's no paper. And I say, well, how are you in school with no pencil and paper? That's the basics. But if you employ those small disciplines every single day, that's how you reach a level of success. Okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. And again, I'm not going to be too long. How to master this success matrix. And I've come up with this. I want you to declare, all of us in here, not just young, but old, all of us, that I am. Because there's power in saying I am and what you are. So that could be, I am a great student. I am a good child to my parent. I am a good parent to my children. Once you declare what you are, that gives you the power to actually live that out. So for the I am, I break it down to information, your attitude, and mastery and motivation. So the I am, we're going to talk about it in detail. You have to look for and have the proper information. You have to have the proper attitude for success, and you have to have mastery of whatever it is you want to do and motivation to stay on the right track. So for you, I am whatever I want to be. I am whoever I want to be. And keep in mind, it works in the positive and the negative. Because when I was out there doing that crazy stuff, I was who I was at that time. And I accepted it and I lived it out, but it was all negative. And the bottom line is that when you live out those negative I ams, you end up in jail. Or you end up without a good career, or you end up somewhere where you don't want to be when you're an adult. So make sure that you are using it in a positive way. And I put here, it also works whether you're aware of it or not. And what that means is, whether you are aware of that you're declaring a certain thing, I am a great person, or let's keep it real, I am a loser. You may not even know it, but it's living itself out by your daily actions. So all of us here, and I'm going to tell you what Ms. Hubbard hit on that was so important, those of you who have spent your time to come here today is exceptional. Because time is the one resource that we don't have. It expires every day. We're losing time. But this time is well spent. So that's what I implore to you. Make sure you're spending your time well. Invest in your time. So when you're spending your time in a good way, the I am is working for you positively. But when I said whether you're aware of it or not, if you're spending all your time getting high, drinking, not studying, things like that, then the I am is working. You may not be aware of it, but you're building the I am, whatever that's going to be. I am a person that has a problem with alcohol. I am a person who is addicted to drugs. Or I am a person who may not have employment when I graduate from high school because I'm not preparing myself. So that's why you have to be aware and declare who you are and what you want to be and who you want to be. So the I am is important because what you think of yourself is your philosophy, and that's very important because you're going to act out your philosophy. If you believe that you are a good student, if I believe that I'm a good judge, and that's what I want to do, then every day when I get on that bench, that's how I'm going to try to portray myself. And as I'm working toward that, it'll happen for me. But the same thing is that your thoughts become things. That's very important. What you're thinking about, not necessarily right now, but on the regular basis, what you think about become things. So if you're always thinking about, you know what, when I graduate, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Best believe you are going to graduate because you're thinking about that, you're focusing on that. But at the same time, if your thoughts are always negative or they're not focused on what you need to be or what you want to be, those will become things also. So it's important to know that your consistent thoughts, they become things because they become your philosophy. They become who you believe you are. That's why it's important that you not only think well, but also make sure you're around people who are also thinking on your level. Whether we're young or old, that's important. And of course, we talked about the negative possibilities, but real quick, I just want to mention these few things. In East Cleveland recently, there was an RTA bus driver who was recovering after being punched at the end of his shift. The attack happened in East Cleveland. I have that there because I actually do a lot of RTA cases now. There's a lot of things that are happening on the RTA bus. We saw the one big thing with the young lady and the driver, but those things are happening often. But that's an example of negativity that's going on in our community. In East Cleveland, a young man shot in his driveway. Then at the funeral, there were gunshots fired. Things like that that are the reality of negative interaction or negative thoughts, negative philosophies. A young lady who played in the band in Chicago was shot. She actually played at the presidential inauguration, if you remember. She went back home, was in a park, and there was shooting going on, and she was killed. And that's in Chicago. On a national level, I put this up recently, more than 28 NFL players have been arrested since February 3rd. And when I do different types of programs and workshops, I break them down and break down the offenses and how we are exposed to the same thing. But the bottom line is that negative philosophies have results. So even on that level, you can be a millionaire. But if your mind is not right, if you're not thinking right, you're going to expose yourself to this legal matrix. And it doesn't matter how rich you are or how poor you are, because if you get caught up in the matrix, you'll have to suffer the consequences. In the program that we do at the court, we talk about Martha Stewart and how she had to go to jail. Rappers and Michael Vick, you name it. The bottom line is the money doesn't matter. If you step outside the line and you get caught up with this legal matrix, you will have to pay the consequences. And then, of course, this is the latest one, the most tragic one, is the 23-year-old who was charged with murder, the New England Patriot. And even though we don't know exactly how that's going to come out right now, he's even under investigation for 2 more murders. So again, that just shows you how this whole I am can work negatively if you're not aware of it. So, well then again, murder is different. I was going to say, most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to commit a crime. Now murder, you may not decide to do it in the morning, but if you're convicted of murder, obviously at some point you decide to do it. But the bottom line is that most of us are not thinking that we want to destroy our lives when we wake up. But if we're not thinking positively and not focused on our future and focused on how we can be successful, these are the traps that we fall into. Oh, and this is another reason why it's very important that we don't have time to waste, that we can't just say young people to get it together eventually. You know, recently the Supreme Court struck down parts of the Voting Rights Act, and whether you know the details of it or not, the bottom line is that all the luxuries that we feel that we're so used to, they are still under attack every day. So just the fact that some of your voting rights may be affected in some way in certain states in this country, it shows you that we just don't have time to waste. So we don't have time for young people to get it together eventually. So cycle breakers. That's what we're doing at the East Cleveland Court. My staff, everything that we do, we're all aimed at being cycle breakers. And on that fist you see, we're trying to break the cycles of going to jail, hopelessness, lack of education, poverty. That includes actual poverty and as well as mental poverty, single parent homes, all of those things that kind of push us back and give us challenges. We're trying to work to effectively break those cycles. And people often wonder, as judge, how do I find time to do all that stuff? Well, I have to. That's my position. I have no choice but to do that because that's why I'm put there. I'm not put there just to put people in jail and impose a $1,000 fine, even though, the city of East Cleveland needs their finances. People often say that we're thirsty. Let me tell you something about that. People say East Cleveland is thirsty, but in reality, it's not about thirst. It's just if you break the law, there are fines to pay. I hear that every day. there's nowhere else. First of all, if you go to McDonald's and you buy a Big Mac and they say, or the Big Mac meal, and they say you owe $5 or whatever, you're not going to turn around and say, y'all thirsty. You're just going to pay for it because that's what it costs. When you run a red light in East Cleveland, the fine is $80 plus cost. It is what it is. But people often say East Cleveland's thirsty. Sorry, I had to address that. So what is a cycle breaker? Now this is where we all can be cycle breakers. If you help and inspire people to better their lives, you are a cycle breaker. It doesn't matter how much you do or how long you've been doing it. It doesn't matter if today is your first day or if you've been helping change lives for 20 years. There's no test to pass, no license to earn, no membership card to get. You just help people and you inspire them, then you are helping break cycles. Just by simply talking to someone, a young person, an adult next to you, giving them a smile, giving them some encouragement, you're helping breaking cycles. So that's what we try to do. Now, of course, we can break it down into some more details of what you can do specifically, but that's generally the position of what a cycle breaker is. So what does it take to be a cycle breaker? You have to identify a negative situation or circumstance in your life, your family's life, the community, or the world. So whatever it is that you decide to do when you leave here, because you're all leaders, and it's wonderful to be in a room with such young, powerful leaders, whether you decide, you want to tackle the homelessness problem, or you decide you want to stop people from dropping out of school, whatever it is, you identify that negative situation, and then you make the commitment to help change it in some way or form. Whether it's simply by you being an example yourself. So I'm not going to drop out of school, or I'm not going to be late to class, or I'm not going to fight in the hallway, or I'm not going to do all the things that I see my other friends doing. That's a way of being a cycle breaker. And after you identify that negative situation, you have to make the decision to stop the cycle. And I put here you have to get up, get out, and do something, which means you can't just say I'm a cycle breaker. Then you have to do something. You have to show it in your actions, either physically by getting involved with the cause, coming down here to these types of leadership summits, or simply showing it by your actions and how you live it. And then you must prepare yourself. And the reason I put that there is because you always have to get the information. And if you remember when we're talking about the I am, we're going to go back to that. Information is important. Information and education. That is important to changing and being cycle breakers. So we go back to the I am, because now we're talking success, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I don't want to be too long. Deep in all of us, we have seeds, but a seed, unless it's released, it only has the potential or a promise of being a tree. I like that statement because we all have seeds in us of greatness. We can all do so many things beyond what we can even comprehend. Just think about it. When Steve Jobs was born, do you think the day he was born or when he was in high school or elementary, he thought, I'm going to make this thing that's going to be called the iPod, then I'm going to make an iPhone and an iPad, and it's going to change the world? He had no idea. But that was the type of seed that was in him, and it's in all of us. You may not even know it right now, the greatness that you can achieve, but it's there, but you have to cultivate it. So part of the I am, for all of you being here, is I am a leader. This is a leadership summit. You are all leaders. And once you declare that, then you will start living it out. So when someone asks you to smoke some marijuana or, to get drunk or any of that stuff, you are a leader. And you have to lead by example, so you're going to live that out. So for leadership, I put this up because we talked about this in our court. For true leadership, and when you see problems, you have to get involved. That's basically what this is stating. Nothing happens without leadership. Nothing will change without leadership. Nothing develops without leadership. Nothing improves without leadership. So you have to be involved, and we have to have leaders. That's why I don't mind the crowd being smaller than what we normally would expect, because leadership is hard. And not everybody is serious about being a leader, even though you can be, and not everybody is ready to put up the commitment. So I commend you all for being here, because you are all leaders. And I put here, do you want to be a sheep or a lion? Do you want to, control your environment, or do you want to be a victim of your environment? But I know all of you are going to be victors and not victims, so I can pass that. The I in I am is information. Your talent, your education. So I'll go back to that. Information is important in I am. So that's why it's important to stay in school. But you can't declare I am a great judge, but then I don't know how to be a judge. Or I am a superstar, whatever it is you want to be, but you don't know anything about the industry that you want to go into. Or you can't say I am a great drummer and never practice the drums or learn how to play. So
So information is the first step in becoming that great I am that you can. And then the A is about attitude. Your attitude will either take you to places or they will keep you from getting in places. Half of the problems that I see in my court is people come up there with terrible attitudes and they expect to get a break. Well, if you had a positive attitude, it's possible you could get a break, but not with a negative attitude. So part of the I am is not only getting the information and education so that you can do great things, but then having the right attitude. Because you can be the smartest young person in the room, but if your attitude is terrible, the doors will close on you. Keep that in mind. You can't do anything with a bad attitude. Now the lion, he relates to attitude because think about this. The lion is not the tallest animal in the jungle. He is not the largest animal in the jungle. The lion is not the heaviest animal. And he's not the smartest, but yet he's the king of the jungle. How is he the king? Because the lion walks around as if I am the man. Bottom line. He walks around basically with that attitude. If you get in my way, I'm going to tear you up, I'm going to eat you and tear you to pieces. And everybody believes it. The big 300-400-pound lion believes it. That this little, the elephant. The 300-pound elephant believes that this little lion can kill him. And he probably can. But part of it is his attitude though. So I want all of you to have that attitude like lions because you are kings. But again, the attitude is important. That's the focus here. Well, there we go again. There's a lion looking at the elephant. And again, you can see from this picture, the elephant could actually crush his head if he just thought he could, or if he just had that drive or the confidence. So attitude is so very important in the I am. That's the lion. This picture here is once the lion has actually gotten on top of the elephant. He's digging in at this point. Now, being a judge, I'm not a graphic guy, but I love my graphics, all these drops and pulls. So attitude makes the lion the leader. So everything you want to do, 80% is attitude, 20% is skill. Why is that? Because if you can impress enough people, the doors will open for you. If you call someone for an internship as you get older and you continue through high school and you have this great attitude, I personally would rather hire a young man or a young woman with a wonderful attitude than someone who's a 4.0 but just is terrible to be around. Attitude stinks. When they walk in, they drain all the energy because they're down all the time. So we have to adjust our attitudes. Our attitudes come from our belief systems. And keep this in mind, you can never achieve beyond what you believe about yourself. So if you don't declare that I am a leader, you'll never be a leader. So you have to believe it. It's part of your attitude. Your attitude will then produce your behavior. So if you know that you are a leader, then you won't sell drugs. Or you'll stop selling drugs. You'll know that I'm above that. I'm better than that. I don't have to live like that. So your attitude is very important. And then the last part of the I am is your motivation and your mastery. So once you get the information, remember the I is information, you have to get education. Then you have to get the mastery part of it. You have to be the best at it. You have to strive to be the best at it. So it's not just enough to go to school and say, you know what, I want to be an engineer. You want to be really, really good at it. You want to master it so that you cannot be denied. See, the key is you want to be so good that they can't even turn you away. That way you avoid the legal matrix because you have positioned yourself for greatness because you are the best at it. So not only do you have to have mastery for that I am, but then the motivation. Motivation is important because it goes back to being a cycle breaker. I'm going to tell you, it is hard, young people. It is hard to stay on track. It really is. Because when you leave here and all this great information you're going to get, you're probably going to get in the car and you're going to probably hear some Lil Wayne or, you know, the new Jay-Z or whatever the case may be, and it's going to be different than what you were told here. But that's just the reality. So, you know, when you get in the car and you hear it's all about money, cars, drugs, and women, or men for that matter, when you hear that, but yet you heard here how I'm a leader and I can do this and I'm going to be great, you have to balance that. And that's where it gets hard. You have to stay motivated. Even me, with being the cycle breaker, with the cycle breaker movement that we have, that stuff gets hard every day. Because I have to go on that bench no matter how tired I am, and I have to inspire that person in front of me. And sometimes I get tired and I'll say, you know what, I'm not going to say this. And it happened just the other day. I had a 22-year-old guy in front of me charged with aggravated robbery. It was his third time being charged. I had another 23-year-old charged with robbery, and then a 20-year-old with a drug case. And they were sitting in front of me for the preliminary hearings, and I almost let them go because it was a long day. And I said, you know what, gentlemen, I said, before you go, I have to say this. because this is what I do. I said, all of you are too young to have been in and out of the jail system and the legal system so many times with these serious charges. I said, you are all leaders, you are all great. And whether you see that greatness in yourself, whether you can feel it, whether you believe it, you have it in you. But you have to change your behavior. And I said, now, I don't know if you're guilty of this or not, because you're presumed innocent as you sit here. But the bottom line is, when you get this behind you, whether that means after you do 2 to 8 years in prison because you robbed somebody, or whether that means you get out of it because you were falsely accused, whatever the case may be, from this point on, you have to go in a different direction. Because this in and out of jail stuff is beneath you. You're greater than that. And my point is, being a cycle breaker is hard because I didn't even feel like saying it because I was tired. And sometimes I feel like I'm just preaching to these guys over and over again. They keep coming in and out of my court, but I had to do it because I had to have the motivation to keep on going. Because if I stand before you and say I am a cycle breaker, then I have to be a cycle breaker, and I have to keep that motivation up. So, Ms. Hubbard, I could go on for hours and hours. I have so many slides, but I'm going to stop because I know we have it scheduled.
You have
Yes.
part 2 also, right?
Yes. So I'm going to stop at this point. But basically, what we were talking about was the I am. All of you are great and you are leaders, but declare it. Before you leave here today, declare your leadership, declare what you want to do, declare your greatness, and then live it out. All right, thank you. Oh.
So I want to thank you for your testimony and words of encouragement. So when we talk about being the cycle breakers, and often society says, lock them away and throw away the key. So in your approach to being a cycle breaker, the youth that come through your court, what is their recidivism rate? I mean, how often by taking your approach and really believing that there is change, there's hope for them to change, how often do you see them again?
Well, first of all, just to be clear too, because I do a lot of work with youth, but our court is not specifically a juvenile court. We're all adults. But interestingly, because this is so important to me, we've established a relationship with East Cleveland where we have, a diversion program where some youth who are either on their way downtown, they may come to our court for a diversion program. And then I noticed that for some reason in East Cleveland, the diversion program was full of kids from other suburbs, not East Cleveland. So I went to the superintendent, Ms. Corley, and I said, we need to build a relationship so that before these kids from Shaw or whatever the case may be go downtown, they can stop at my court. Because really, physically, we're in between the school, my court, and then downtown. So basically, we do now see a lot of youth in an informal way because I couldn't sentence them because I have an adult court. So to answer your question though, as far as recidivism, I really see, from my programs, I see a positive impact. I haven't seen a lot of the students offending. For instance, when I do my programs at Glenville and Shaw, the students that come through there, very rarely do I have them re-offend or even offend, because sometimes I have people who've been through the legal system, sometimes not. So it's been pretty successful, but I must admit though, especially when dealing with the adults, sometimes they don't get it. But when I do my programs, I make them come back before me. They have to, it actually we call it read, write, and speak. So they'll go to the program, I'll give them something to read either pre-program or during it. Then they'll come back for a sentencing date and in court tell us all what they learned from the program in open court. And it's always wonderful when I get those messages of how these young men and women want to change their lives, and even older men and women. So they come back before me and I believe it's sincere. And often, the proof is in the pudding, so we'll see. But the key is the consistency. That's the hard part. So I think I'm really making an impact. I really do. I feel I'm changing lives. But at the end of the day, when they leave me, do we have the wraparound resources to keep them on the right track? Yes?
There's a lot of misunderstanding between the conservative and the not-so-conservative. The liberals and the Democrats and some of the Republicans left and right. Not all of us, that are poor, are a bunch of hoodlums. I mean, a lot of us are decent. We've never been in trouble, clear records. I'm just saying, to avoid a lot of the police brutality. How would you give a comment towards that?
Okay. Great question. I think everyone has their own purpose, and they should, at least their direction of how they approach changing. And this is really interesting because it came up after the Trayvon Martin decision. I had we normally do a life skills workshop. Oh, and everyone is invited. Every Monday at 5:30 p.m. in our courtroom, we have life skills building where we do the cycle breaker program. I also do some instruction on emotional intelligence, which is a really big way of changing your life. And we do the Finish First program, which is avoiding negative interaction with the legal system, which is why Officer King is here today. She does that program with me, where you can talk with a police officer in a safe environment and we can understand what they're thinking and how to change your life. So the point is, we had a discussion about, after the Trayvon Martin decision, and my position was, okay, that was tragic. The decision was tragic, but as a judge, I can't really speak on the legalities. The jury spoke and that was it. But I came with the approach of, what do I do to talk to young people about how to save your life so that you don't end up in that same situation? So for me, I'm speaking to the demographic that either may expose themselves to that type of harm, whether it's illegal behavior, harm from other people, or those who have done it already.
Can I correct you for that?
Yes.
No, there's a lot of people that would make that silly little assumption that, you're some sort of hoodlum, but you don't necessarily dress that way.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, there's just an assumption.
Yeah,
And then
and-
when the social security number is ran, there's nothing on the record.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate that, and I didn't use the word hoodlum. What I said was basically that there are people who speak to that specifically. My goal as a cycle breaker is to keep people out of the legal system. So for me personally, you're right, there are people who deal with police brutality. There are people who will stage, and I support them, who stage the marches, who demand that laws are changed, and I support them fully. For me, mine is to educate the young people before you even get there. So I want to talk to these leaders in here on how you can be the next leaders. And I don't necessarily deal with the other issues, but we need those people. And that's why we partner. And that's why these commentaries are so great. Because everybody who have different resources and different approaches can change it in their own way. But me specifically as a judge too, there's only limited things I can do in regard to those type of specific issues. Because when a case comes before me, I have to look at it a certain way. So for me, I couldn't actually get on the picket lines involving certain legal issues, but I can educate as many people as I can. Any other questions? All right. I think we're going to do something else a little later on, so I appreciate your attention and your time. Because remember, time is so important, and how you spend it is so important because we can't get it back. Thank you.